Good evening. We obviously had a long day with Mr. Bannon today. It began by being informed by Mr. Bannon's counsel that as he was attending on a voluntary basis, he was going to decline to answer any questions concerning any discussions, meetings, conversations that took place either during the transition or during his time in the administration. After we explored several attempts to try to elicit information that took place during those periods, we convened on a bipartisan basis and agreed to the issuance of a subpoena to make his attendance at the hearing compulsory. He was then served with a subpoena during the course of the interview. His counsel then conferred again with the White House and was instructed by the White House to refuse again to answer any questions, even though he was under a compulsory process concerning the period of time during the transition and during the administration. We then proceeded to try to ask questions about these periods. Mr. Bannon was also under instructions not to answer questions even after he left the White House concerning conversations he had with the President that might be for the purpose of the President seeking his advice on anything. The scope of this assertion of privilege, if that's what it is breathtaking. It goes well beyond anything we have seen in this investigation. In the past, we have had some witnesses refuse to answer a specific question on the basis that the White House might invoke a privilege over that question. We don't recognize that as a right to withhold the answer to a question on the basis that the White House might someday later exert a privilege, but nonetheless, it was cabined to a specific conversation with the President. This was effectively a gag order by the White House, preventing this witness from answering almost any question concerning his time in the transition or the administration, and many questions even after he left the administration. And the breadth of this became very apparent because he not only refused to answer questions that took place within the White House, but also any conversations he had with people outside the White House. So the position that the White House was evidently insisting upon in this interview was even when Mr. Bannon might be speaking to outside parties, might be speaking to members of the press, might be talking publicly on the record or off the record, that somehow this was covered by a potential claim of executive privilege down the road. If the White House is permitted to maintain that kind of a gag rule on a witness, no congressional investigation could ever be effective. So this obviously can't stand. We expect to have Mr. Bannon back in, we hope very soon, with a different position by the White House, because this position is completely unsustainable. But much of the morning, afternoon, and early evening was spent exploring the contours of this rather audacious claim by the White House that somehow this witness couldn't answer our questions because at some later date they may seek to invoke privilege.